understand how things will go. So, this session will be delivered in 5 10-minute sections. The first section will be getting started, turning one day into day one. Then we'll go into the anatomy of a novel, and that will talk about the plot from hook to the resolution, characters, creating people who won't stay on the page, and we'll have an activity for you as well. Dialogue, making readers feel like they're eavesdropping on the good stuff, and the secret sauce of a great novel. During each section, your microphones will be muted. Please place comments in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. After each section, we'll unmute the mics and welcome people to have a quick Q&A. I'll also be reading some notes from the chat at that time. And of course, at the end, we'll have more questions. So again, smile, get camera ready. For the next few seconds, we're going to be taking pictures of everyone on screen, so look your best. And thanks again for your participation. Please grab your pens, your devices, and your enthusiasm as we get ready to have a lot of fun together. So I'm honored to introduce Erica Scavella Hill, the second Vice President of Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter, to share greetings and emergency messaging.
Good evening, guests and sorors. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. In any event that we plan as Deltas, we always want to make sure that our guests are Delta ready. Please take the time to identify 2 exits in your current location. We want to make sure that you are aware of 2 exits in the event of the need for an emergency evacuation. Knowing where those exits are is essential for an efficient evacuation. Additionally, during this post-COVID-19 pandemic period, we ask that you continue to adhere to your local guidelines. Please continue to be safe and always be Delta ready. I'm going to introduce our chapter president, Soror Nicole Jordan, for her greetings to the membership.
Thank you, sorors. So good evening. I am Nicole Jordan. I'm the president of the Washington, D.C. Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I am absolutely thrilled to welcome each of you to this Not Your Average Book Club event, this wonderful writer's workshop. So if you know me, I love the number 5, and so I'm excited for so many reasons. The first is that our phenomenal Arts and Letters Committee continues to deliver programs that are innovative, creative, and simply outstanding. So I know that tonight is going to be just a fabulous evening. Secondly, I believe that everyone has a story within them, and that story deserves to be told. And I am a storyteller professionally. I work with companies and people every day to tell their truths and their purpose to the world. So I am ecstatic whenever we get an opportunity to stop a second and actually tell our own story. Third reason, I get to learn from one of the best, our very own Soror Victoria Christopher Murray, WDC's own, our treasurer, who is a member of our chapter. And I know that I'm going to learn something because every time I speak with her, she gives and drops nuggets. The fourth is simply because I love to read, and I can't wait to see what comes from this meeting. A book that's going to come that's going to help me through my summer days. And then fifth is that we get to share this time together with you. Each of you took time today to join with us, and we're going to learn from one another to grow and to be inspired by your words and your story. So sit back, open your hearts, enjoy this fabulous workshop, share what you can learn with others because our stories matter. And in this day and age, we need to make sure that we are telling our stories and that they are deserving to be heard. So I want to thank the Arts and Letters Committee, led by Tracy Coleman, Natasha Osborne, Aaron Clark, and our Soror Victoria Christopher Murray, and our host, Janie Jenkins, and our tech team, and everyone else who made today, Janelle Jenkins, I don't know why I said that, Janelle Jenkins, our tech team, and everyone who made today possible. Enjoy the day and have fun and keep writing and keep telling your story. So I will just turn that over to whoever I'm supposed to because I didn't read the direction.
Janelle, I believe that's me. Is that right?
Natasha, please kick us off with a bio. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to be here and share this few moments with you all. I want to introduce a good soror of our chapter. So Victoria Christopher Murray is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author of The Personal Librarian and The First Ladies. She attended Hampton University and received her MBA from New York University Stern School of Business. With more than 30 titles and 3 million books in print, Victoria has won 10 African American literary awards and has 5 NAACP Image Award nominations, where she won in 2016. 5 of her novels have been made into movies for Lifetime. Can y'all get excited about that? Um, I also want you to know her latest novel was Harlem Rhapsody, is a USA Today bestseller, and was a CBS News Calvi Book Club pick. So without further ado, I turn this over to our wonderful author on her moments with us. So here's Victoria Christopher Murray.
Well, thank you. I am so excited to be here. I'm so glad you got through that bio. But this is so exciting for me. I don't know why I'm so excited. Maybe it's because this is my own. I love doing these kinds of workshops anyway, but when I can do them with people that I love and feel so personally connected to, I am so excited. So at any point, I really had hoped that this could be more of a conversational thing. So please feel free to put those questions in the chat, because the most important thing to me is to be able to answer your questions. I'm going to be giving you a lot of information. It's going to feel like an information dump because we only have 2 hours. But at the end, I'll share a way that you can stay connected with me, because regularly I teach writing and try to bring this new generation of writers along, because the president of our chapter, Nicole, said something that was very important, especially in today's times. Everyone has a story in them. I've always believed that. The challenge is that if God is giving you an inkling right now, you need to write the story, because there's never been a time more important in our history than now to tell our stories. Before, we didn't have much of a history to tell. We do now, and they are trying to bury us. They are trying to pretend that we don't exist. So that's why I write what I write, because as they bury us, I'm going to excavate us. And I'm going to ask that you guys do the same thing. So if you have an inkling of a story, that's not there by accident. And I hope to give you some tools and things that you can move and use to move forward with that. So let's get started on the first one. The first part of this talk, I really wanted it to be how to change your dream from one day I'm going to do this to tomorrow is day one when I will start to do this. How do you get started? Because many people have that story. In fact, one of the reasons when I get on an airplane and somebody sits down to me and says to me, "What do you do for a living?" I never tell them I'm a writer, because everybody wants to be a writer, and then they're going to talk to me through the whole flight, and then I don't get any writing done. So I tell them I'm a pastor, and they never talk to me after that. But usually most people say they want to write a story, and the statistics show that only 3 out of 100 people will actually do it. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Because I'm sure you're here because you've been wanting to do it, and all kinds of things have gotten in the way. And this is what happens. We all may have a desire to write, but our resistance to writing is greater than our desire. And what you have to do is shift that. How do you shift that? I've wanted to be a writer my entire life. From the time I was 7 years old, the only thing I have ever wanted to do is be a writer. At one point, I wanted to be a ballet dancer and a school crossing guard, but the only thing that was real was a writer. And I didn't write my very first novel until I was 42 years old. And what was happening in between was that life got in the way. I got married, I had a daughter, I had all of this life. But really, what was happening was that I was a little bit afraid. Because if you give birth to this baby, this book, you got to do something with it. And somebody may call your baby ugly. And we're going to talk about that. But every year I would set a goal that I was going to write. This was going to be the year I was going to write my book. And my husband was right there with me saying, go get him, until 10, 15, 16 years passed. And in 1996, when I got ready to set my goals for 1997, I said, this is the year I'm going to do it. And my husband said, yeah, you said that last year. I said, no, this year is really the year. He said, you said that last year too. He said, but you need to get it straight, because one day you're going to be 80 years old and you're going to be sitting on someone's porch and you're going to be in some rocking chair, rocking away, wishing that you had done it. And that scared the daylights out of me, because he painted a picture that I could see where I was going to be 80 years old and I hadn't even tried. And that fear, a little bit of fear, moved my resistance to writing. At that point, my desire became higher than my resistance, because I didn't want to be 80 and I never even tried to do the one thing I wanted to do. So life was getting in the way. That's just the truth. Life does get in the way. So I made a commitment on that day. I said I was going to write one word a day. Now, I said I might be 80 when I finish, but at least I would have tried. And there were some days when I came home and I literally wrote, she said, but I sat down in front of that computer and did something. There were days when I came home and only felt like writing, she said, and a whole chapter poured out of me. I finished the first draft of that book in 3 months. And that book, Temptation, is the book that launched my career. And from that point forward, from making the commitment of writing one word a day, I have been writing full time now for almost 30 years. And so I tell that story because it's true. And no matter what you do, you have to, especially in the beginning, you have to write no matter what it takes. Here's the thing, the quality nor the quantity of what you're writing in that first draft matters. It's just to develop the discipline of writing, especially in the beginning. So how do you get started? If there was a formula, or if I could make up a formula that would work, I would make $1 million. Because there's no formula to getting started. It really is just taking the thoughts that's in your head, in your heart, and moving those thoughts from your heart into your head and onto the page. It's just, when I'm teaching children, I tell them this and they giggle. It literally is throwing up on the page, because you can't write a book in your head. So you just start writing words on a page, and the words must be bad. Bad words matter. Bad words matter here. You are not going for quality, especially in your first draft. If any of you saw my first draft that looks like Swiss cheese, because I will leave a blank if I can't think of a word, you would be saying, how in the world did Victoria Christopher Murray ever get a contract? If you saw my first draft. But it's because you have to get the words from your head onto the page. You cannot organize thoughts in your head. You cannot edit and move things around in your head. It has to be on the page for you to do something with it. So that's the thing that you have to get used to, because it's very hard for people to not try to write perfection. It's very hard for when you're doing it that first time. Everybody, hold on a second, everybody wants to write this their first time. And let me tell you about this book. This, my latest novel, it took not one, not two, not three, but 4 drafts before I sent it in to my agent. When I sent it into my agent, she sent me back an 11-page editorial letter that laid me out on the ground so bad that I called my best friend who's a writer and I said, Rashonda, I'm gonna have to give the money back. And she said, first of all, we ain't giving no money back. We gonna figure this out. Then it took me 7 weeks to rewrite and do all the changes that she had me do. Then I gave it to my co-author who didn't write this with me. It took me 3 weeks to do those edits before it went to my editor. That was all of this work. And remember I said 4 drafts? It took me a year and a half. A year and a half to do that. Then when it went to my editor, it was another 6 months before we got to this. And so the challenge sometimes with a new writer or debut writer is they want to write this on their first draft. That's not going to happen. Your first draft should just be words on a page that don't make sense. Sometimes write it in third person, first person, it doesn't matter, just write what you see. Now, a lot of people come here and say they already have an idea of what to do. And a lot of people don't know what exactly should I write? How do I get started? You may have an unction to write, but you don't know exactly what you're going to write. There are creative ideas all around you. All around you. I've written 30 novels. One of my favorite novels that I've ever written, it's in my top 3, is called If Only for One Night. Do you know where I got that from? The Luther Vandross song. It's one of my favorite songs. And I said, I'm going to write that story. And I wrote that story. And it turned out to be one of my bestsellers. Another story I wrote, my very first novel, and then actually I would say The Deal of Dancing the Devil more so. I wrote a novel to me that was the story of the Garden of Eden. It was the story of, and I didn't even have enough creativity to rename the characters. I named them Adam and Evia and told the story in a modern day. They were from Barry Farms, Washington, D.C. I didn't even live here then. And I just retold the story. Another one of my best-selling books. We have ideas all around us all the time. Keep your creative eyes open. Whether you're passing a church marquee or listening to a conversation in Starbucks, and we're going to talk a little bit about that because I got an idea once from that. No matter what you're doing, keep those creative eyes open. Now, when you're getting started, especially in the beginning, sometimes I feel like we're writing through fear. And I believe that everybody has that. And I want you to know that after 30 years in the business, 30 novels, and every single thing that I've been blessed to get, I am afraid with every single book I write. I am thinking that this is going to be the book that y'all say she needs to go get a job because it's over. I believe that fear is God's way of keeping you humble. And the anxiety that we feel sometimes has to do with the anticipation of greatness. And the reason I say that, and I want you to understand that, is because it's really scary to write a book. It's really scary to put all of your heart on the page and then have somebody read it and call this baby that you just birthed ugly. And people do that to me all the time. But the good thing is that there are hundreds of thousands who read it and think my baby's pretty cute. And so the only thing that you have to do is to write even when you're scared. Even when you're scared. That's good stuff. If you are not afraid, there's something wrong. So be afraid. And one thing I want to talk about before we get into the anatomy of the novel is writer's block. Because people always say that, especially in the beginning, that they have writer's block, they don't know what to do. How do you overcome this? I don't really believe in writer's block. I think it's writer's procrastination. I think it's a little bit of the fear coming in. But you have to face it. You can't just say, you could say, get thee behind me, but you have to kind of face it. So there are things when I don't feel like writing. That's what I call it. A little bit of procrastination that I do. First of all, one of the things I do is just sit down and write. Maybe not my story, but write about something else. Write someone a letter. Write about the dream you had last night. Do a description of something you're looking out the window. Google writing prompts and get writing prompts from that. The thing about just writing is that it gets your juices flowing. And what's so interesting is whenever I have to do something like that, it always ends up in my story somehow. It always will. So keep a journal of pages and just write anything. The thing is to just exercise the muscle and get it going. Another thing that works for me is reading. I will just go and start reading a good book. And I know there's a question of should you read while you're writing? I do. A lot of writers don't like to. They think they're going to hear another voice. I think my voice is strong enough. I would suspect that your voice is strong enough too. I think reading motivates, educates, encourages. So usually if I don't feel like writing, I'll sit down and read somebody else's work, 2 pages. I'm like, wait a minute. They're making the money because I'm reading their book. Let me go and read too, and go back to writing. So that's something that we do. Also,
Another
if
rum
you
punch.
find yourself with writer's block, sometimes it's not writer's block. Sometimes it's you haven't found your creative rhythm. And what I mean by that, and you're going to have to search for this, we all don't have the same creative clocks. One of my best friends was a writer, Everett Jerome Dickey, who would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and write. If I got up and never got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to write, I wouldn't have a job because y'all would have said, there's no way. It's dark outside. I sleep when it's dark. And so that's not my creative clock, but I had to discover my creative clock. And my creative clock is really mostly in the afternoon, except when I'm on deadline, I could write anytime, but mostly in the afternoon are my best hours. That's something that you're going to have to experiment with. So it's not always procrastination. It may be that you're in the wrong writing time zone. And you have to experiment to see what's the best way for you to find your rhythm. So that's how you can get started, how to break through, how to just get started. Your first draft should look like an ugly baby. You're giving birth to your ideas, and everybody knows that when a woman gives birth, that baby that comes out, the only one that thinks it's cute is the mama. Even the daddy knows it ain't looking too good. But that's giving birth. And what happens? You clean the baby up. It starts looking a little better. That's your second draft. You take it home and you put a bow on that bald head. It starts looking even better. And you just keep going until the baby grows into its skin. The baby is not going to college when you get birth. Not going to go to college with that. So I would like to answer some questions before we get into the anatomy of a novel.
Alrighty, Victoria, we have a few questions from the chat and one thing to clarify. I've heard you mention one, writing motivates, educates, and encourages. Thank you for that. But also, you've mentioned a creative rhythm and discipline. Can you talk about the balance of the two?
The balance of creative rhythm
And like discipline. So when you like, is
yes,
this like
okay,
workout
good.
discipline or yes?
Yes, so you need discipline. And if you're just starting out, I would say choose a month. For example, there's an event that I'm doing. I'll talk about this at the end. I'm doing something called Write Now November with writers all over the country because November is National Novel Writing Month. And so that company went out of business. I'm going to just take it over, and we're writing together. And the thing that's so important about this, and when you're just starting out, is to write every day. It's to develop the discipline. You must write every day when you're just starting out, because that will develop the writing muscle. And it takes 21 days to create a habit, something that you're used to. And it's so important in the beginning to write every day. It's really important not only to just get it done, but there are probably, and I hope there are people on here who would like to turn writing into a career. And this is what I would say to anyone who wants their writing to become a career. Treat your writing like a hobby, it will stay a hobby. Treat it like a career, it will become a career. It did not become a career until I started writing every day.
Thank you, Victoria. A few other questions. Janine Howard asked, as an attorney, and I think we could expand this to a technical writer, how can technical writers transition from a very disciplined and structured type of writing more into a passionate type of writing?
And I think that's a really good question, because my co-author, who I wrote The Personal Librarian and The First Ladies with, is an attorney by trade. And so she had been writing novels and everything, but when we got together, I was like, girl, 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 girl. And I'll give you an example. In The Personal Librarian, this is about a woman who she was passing for white, but she put together JP Morgan's entire art collection. And she was entering into an affair with this man, a married man, actually, but the wife gave a blessing. It was crazy. And so they were having an affair. And the first night, my co-author wrote this scene where they got to the hotel room and they kissed outside the hotel room. And then they went inside and it was morning. I was like, girlfriend, no, I had just finished writing a book called Lust. So I knew that wasn't going to go over. And I had to kind of teach her how to be more descriptive in her writing. But I told her the books to read that would help her to become more descriptive in her writing. And so I think people who are like technical writers, or especially attorneys, y'all are going to make good writers because you have the other stuff that we need in there. Do you know what I mean? Especially if you're going to write a book that's a legal thriller or something. The book that we just finished was so hard for me because it was about the first Black female prosecutor in New York. I feel like I deserve a law degree right now that I did not want. But it was so good because Marie was there and had it. And so I didn't know what to do with that, but I had the other part of writing. I would say read books, especially the more commercial, the better. Not to A lot of my earlier books were full of the kind of stuff that you need to learn how to do and how to have. And then just give it a try, go and do it, and a good editor will help you move forward with that. Does that make sense?
And everyone, please keep the questions coming in the chat. There's some that require a longer answer that we may capture and do follow-ups afterwards. But Victoria, there are a few questions about technique. So do you recommend a writing class, paper versus a device, Google prompts, if you can give more insight on just the how?
Okay, so that's a good question. The how is whatever you want. There are people who actually write longhand. My mind moves too fast for me to do that. But people like Bill Clinton wrote his 900-page book longhand. Jackie Collins used to write longhand. There are people who use an actual typewriter. Because I think what it is how you start is how you'll keep going. I actually write on my iPad, not two fingers. I have a full keyboard. But I started on my iPad because I was traveling so much, and we used to have to take our laptops out at TSA, and two TSA agents dropped my laptop at two different points, and I didn't want to go to jail. And so when the iPads came out in 2010, you didn't have to take them out. And that really helped me to stay out of jail.
Gotcha.
Seriously. And so once I was doing that kind of writing on an iPad, I just stayed there. So whatever is most comfortable for you, there are no rules to that. It really is. And you might change. I wrote on a desktop until 2005. That was the last time I've ever used a desktop. And I wrote on a laptop until 2010. And that was the last time I've ever used a laptop. There are some people, like one of my best friends, Rashonda Tate, who dictates her books.
Mm,
And then she goes back and transcribes it.
okay.
So find what's good for you. I have tried to dictate a book. It don't work. It don't work for me.
Gotcha. And the last question for this section, and again, everyone, please continue to use the chat. While we won't get to everything in this section, we will have a larger Q&A. But one question that got a lot of energy was from Anicia Porter, and apologies if I butchered your name. But how do you quiet that inner voice that makes you doubt yourself?
Ooh, child, that inner voice stays there. I think it comes from different places. Like I said, I think sometimes it's Satan telling you to stop because he does not want these books out there. Sometimes it could be the humility that God wants us to have. And I just didn't understand why every book I have ever written, even the last one, I hear this voice that says, this is the book that they're going to say is horrible. This is it. You're going to go need to get a job. And I'm really too old to get a job now. So it's kind of scary. It is very scary. But then one time I heard Denzel Washington say he was afraid to get on stage. He says he loved Broadway more than anything. But before every performance, he would think, maybe I shouldn't get on this stage. Maybe I can't do it. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're Denzel Washington. You can just say the phone book. We'll be good. You don't have to worry about that. And that was something that almost freed me. I realized that those voices are sometimes there just to keep you focused. The voices never go away. But I hope you're fine and it'll be easier for you to know that I have that same voice. It's your cousin. I mean, my voice is your cousin to your voice. It's not going to go away.
Uh,
And I think that's a good thing because if somebody comes to me and says, girl, before the book comes out, girl, I know this book's good. I doubt it.
Gotcha. And thank you. So we're going to transition. Please keep your questions coming.
Yes.
Victoria has a lot of great stuff now to share with us. So now we're going to talk about the plot from the
We're going
hook
to
to
talk
the
about
resolution.
this is the first from the hook to the resolution, from the beginning of it to the end. And I wanted to say from the hook because that's what you have to do. When I teach writing classes, I do an entire exercise on just the first line of the book. Just the first line, because that's the way you want to get someone to draw in. So what is a plot? Well, first of all, I want to tell you that there's two kinds of stories. There are plot-driven stories and there are character-driven stories. Plot-driven stories, it's all about the story. That story moves at a much faster pace. Sometimes it feels like the characters have to run to keep up with what's happening around them. It's all around the stories. And if you have read any of my books, I couldn't tell you one plot-driven story except the book that's coming out next summer. Because I've always been character-driven. So plot-driven stories are much more commercials, they sell a lot and everything like that. Character-driven stories are what are considered literary novels. And they are all about the character. It's all about the changes that the characters go through. And when you're writing those kinds of novels, you're always asking, why did the character do this? Why? But of course, both stories have plot and they have character. So let's talk about what a plot is. Because what a plot, if you have a good plot, it's going to be a strong story. A plot is simply building a building block. It's one scene over one scene over one scene over one scene. It's if you were to say to someone, this happens, then this happens, then this happens. It's the order of the story. And plot is the movement. It's the movement of the story. What is happening as we're moving everyone through the story? And at the end or in the middle of someplace, something's going to change. Something's going to happen. And this is what I mean. The plot overall, the theme and the plot could be people hate each other, then they love each other. You know, that's a typical one. They start out hating each other, they love them. Or somebody can hate God. Something happened in their life and they're like blaming God. And by the end, they're coming closer to God. Or someone has to make a major decision in their life. I wish we had all read a book similar so I could tell you what it is. But for example, if you read my novel Harlem Rhapsody, the main character was in love with W.E.B. Du Bois, and even though he had a wife. And then she had to make a major decision to move away from him. That is what the plot is about. Where it starts with the hook, what happens in the middle, and the resolution at the end. And there are really 5 parts to a plot, 5 things. So the first part is called exposition. And that's when you're just introducing the character. And it's really important. And I try to do all of this almost in the first chapter. Sometimes it takes a second chapter, but I try to tell you right up front what is going to happen or what the story is about. I wrote a book called Never Say Never. The first line says, I never meant to fall in love with my best friend's husband. I think you're going to kind of know what's going on in the book after that. That was part of the exposition. Now, I had to explain that, but that's the exposition. Even in Harlem Rhapsody, you will know that she is involved with W.E.B. Du Bois from the first page, from the first chapter. So the exposition is just introducing the characters, where it's happening, when it's happening, just the beginning of the story. Then the next part is called rising action. So now you've started the story, you're here, and then things are starting to happen. So somebody gets a job, someone meets someone in the elevator, some rising action. And then in this part, you're going to see the little bit of a conflict. Uh-oh, she met this guy in the elevator, but what about her husband at home? They looked a little too cozy to me. Is something going to happen between them? Those kinds of things. The conflict starts to build during the rising action. Then the major part of the story, the plot that people often know is the climax. And that is when the conflict is at its peak. It has happened. In a book called Temptation, my very first novel that I wrote on one word a day. One word a day. And think about this. I wrote that one word a day, made that commitment because I was too afraid. And that was the first time I was nominated for an NAACP Image Award. I mean, think about that. If I hadn't done it on one word a day, but the climax was when she came home and found her husband with her best friend. That kind of is the climax, right? Like for some people, that would be the end of the story too. You just need 2 more pages. But we're writing novels, so we're not going to just kill them there. We are going to continue the story. So the climax, think of the climax at the very top. So remember rising action, taking it to like a roller coaster. You're at the very top. And then you start coming down with falling action. So you're coming down the roller coaster. And the falling action, the reader sometimes is still unsure, but you see the resolution coming, but you still don't know how it's going to be resolved. Because the wife could still have a gun, you know? Like it could have been hidden. And then the final part is the resolution. When you finally come to an end, that's the conclusion. Now, sometimes the conclusion is not wrapped up in a nice bow. I've never liked to wrap things up in a nice bow. I've gotten letters from people that say, Victoria, I love your books until page 300. And then page 300 to 302, I just want my money back because I don't tie it up. It's not that I'm leaving it open for a sequel. It's just that I don't think life gets tied up like that all the time. But I've been trying to tie it up a little bit better in these later days. But that's when the conflict is resolved. And I'm not saying that they all go off into the, you know, living happily ever after, but you know what's happening. And it's at the end. And so plot sometimes can be a challenging thing to understand. But here's are two things that I want you to do and really do it. And this will help you understand plot. I want you to pick a favorite song, and because you're going to do it too, because a song is a short thing, but then a novel's a long thing. So I want you to pick a favorite song, and I want you to write out that song by scenes. Do you know what I mean? Like if you were writing it in a scene, so that you could see this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and you'll be like, oh, that's how a story unfolds. But the best thing you can do, and I want you to do both, is to take a favorite novel. This is how I promise you, you will understand plot. Take a novel that you've already read, that you already love, and on a piece of paper, on your laptop, wherever, say chapter 1, just 2 sentences of what happened. Chapter 2, just 2 sentences of what happened. And when you have it all laid out, then look at those 5 parts of the plot that I told you. And you'll be able to see, exposition was chapter 1 to 3. Rising action, and sometimes they're going to overlap, you know what I mean? Like chapter 3 could be exposition and rising action, and then you'll see where the climax is. And what you're doing when you do that exercise is you're constructing the plot of a novel. I promise you that will teach you plot better than I ever could.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Are you ready for questions?
Yep, ready for questions with
Okay,
plot.
so there are a couple, and then this time we're going to switch it up so raise your hand. I'm going to ask a couple from the chat, and if you have something, please use the raise your hand gesture, and I'll call you into the conversation.
Yeah, that'll be good because I want to hear some of
I
it.
know
I
that's
mean,
what it's like.
I love you. I love you,
I
Soror.
do, but this
But I want
one-on-one,
to hear some.
we can do this at chapter meeting. We're good. So other voices, please do come into, if you raise your hand, I'll call on you. But there were a couple of themes in the chat. One, if you could talk about the benefits and the challenges of AI, like you mentioned prompts earlier, and then there are questions about how do you remain authentic, keep your authenticity with AI. So if you have a perspective on the challenges and the benefits of AI, and then we'll go to Cynthia and Bella.
So I haven't used AI because it doesn't have a soul. And I saw someone the other day in one of the chat groups on social media. She said, if I read another book that has been written by AI, and I was stunned with that because I was stunned that people are using AI to tell a story or anything. If anything, and I have not used this myself, but I know authors have. I know authors have used it to help outline a story. So I guess you have to tell them what the story is or something, but I don't use AI because I think what I have as a writer that it doesn't have is the soul, and I can write the emotions, and I can write from real feelings, and I don't think AI has it. Interestingly enough, though, about AI, I'm about to be paid because they use 23 of my novels to train AI.
Hmm.
And so publishers have sued the major company that's done that. And so we just had to give in, my agent just gave in all of my information, because if you probably put some of my stuff now in AI and say, was it written by AI? It will probably come back, yes, because they use my stuff to train. Now, I'm not the only author. I mean, there's thousands of authors that were granted this money in this suit. But don't use your writing, even if you're just starting, is better than AI.
Thank
That's
you.
in my opinion for now.
And Bella, if you can unmute yourself, and I know Cynthia, if you still have a question, raise your hand. I just don't see you anymore. Not sure if you dropped, but Bella, if you could, oh, there you are. Bella, and I'll come back to you, Cynthia. So Bella, if you can ask the first question, then we'll go to Cynthia.
Love, love this one.
30 seconds or less question.
Okay. I wonder if you have any advice on, I'm an impatient writer. So I've published articles and I've published estate planning books. I'm on the technical kind of writer. On my fiction novel, I have a problem with wanting to hurry up and get, I know what I want to say and I say it real fast. Like, do you have any tips for how to
Slow down.
Yeah, slow down so I can get 300 pages and not wrap my book up like it's a short story?
Ah, okay, that's a good question. You probably, I don't think there's anything wrong with you writing it and it might be a short story. Then, if you get with a good editor, and don't nobody on this call go to an editor without talking to me first, even if it's an email or whatever. Don't go no place spending no money with no, I'm not playing. I'm not playing with y'all. Don't go, don't, no. Okay? So there's nothing wrong with what you're doing, Bella. Not at all. Rashonda Tate, again, a good friend of mine, she wasn't trying to wrap hers up. It took her like a year and a half to write her first novel, and it was 68 pages. I still tease her on how in the world did it take you a year and a half to write 68 pages? Like, that is crazy to me. But that's all she had. And it was an editor that helped her develop the story more.
Okay.
If you had something that was as short as that, I could help you with that.
Okay.
You know? So don't be upset with that. At least you have a story. What you can't see because you're in the weeds of the story is where to develop it more. Where's your character development? Where's the dialogue? Where's the story? Where is the climax? Don't just tell me this, show me this. And you can't see it yet, and you'll learn that.
Okay.
You'll learn that. So don't be afraid of that.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you for the question, Bella. Cynthia?
Thank you so much. And greetings from north of the border in Toronto, Canada. I
love
come on
Hey.
visit. My question is, do you feel that what you've laid out for us so far applies regardless of whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction? Or do you think it would require some tweaking or changes for nonfiction?
It
Thank
will
you.
require some tweaking because I'm a fiction writer and that's what I know best. But I'm sure you've heard the term creative nonfiction. And that is because with nonfiction, they want people to almost have it sometimes read more like a novel to expand the market on it. So there's tweaking that has to be done, especially if it's a self-help book and you're just giving pointers. But if it's a memoir is written just like this, just like this. So it's going to depend on what kind of nonfiction is it.
It's somewhat of a memoir. It's about me and my mother who
Girl,
passed
it's just like
earlier
this.
this year. Yeah.
No tweaks.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
It's very interesting. So things that you should do is read other memoirs and read historical fiction because sometimes with a memoir, you're not going to remember every single point. So you're going to have to embellish or add things to it. So yeah, Memoir, you're right. You're in the right class. You're in the right place.
Thank you, Cynthia. A couple of questions from the chat were related to co-authors. How do you choose the
Ah.
co-author, and then the cadence? Like, should one person write one chapter, should another person
Ooh.
write another chapter? And then after this question, Keisha will come to you.
Okay. That's a very good question. So I've only collaborated with two people in my career, Rashonda Tate and then Marie Benedict. And I probably hit the Guinness World Book of Records on having the two best people to collaborate with. I don't think you can collaborate with just anyone. You have to have a writing soulmate. And that may not be your best friend because you have to trust what the other person is going to say to you in this, in the collaboration. So you have to trust that they're going to say it has nothing to do with personality. It's for the betterment of the book.
Mm.
And I have seen people try to collaborate and then end up not friends. So be very careful and have a long, long talk. Not, ooh, girl, I like you. We're going to do now, because then you will stop sending her Christmas cards. So we're not going to do that. Wow, every single book that I've collaborated on, if it's written differently. It's just like when I write my own novels. What Marie and I do, because most of our books are centered around Black women and white women, we talk about the entire book first, just talk about the entire book. And then with the personal librarian, we just said, okay, Victoria, I'm going to take that chapter because it's mostly about her family. And you take that chapter because it's mostly about art history. And that was her major. And then after we wrote the first drafts, we switched. And then we go in and put each our strengths in. Because I told you, Marie wrote that sex scene where they kissed outside the hotel room. It was 3 lines. I was like, that ain't even a whole chapter. That wasn't a paragraph. How are you going to really send that in? And then I had to do it. But that was fine because we all should write to our strengths. So there's no way for me to tell you it should be just done this way. It really is a feeling, and you'll find your own rhythm. Anyone who is thinking about collaborating and want to, I'm going to give my email after this so that, well, you could put my email in the chat, Victoria at victoriachristophermurray.com, and I answer my own email. I answer my own email. So any questions or anything like that, I'm willing to answer.
Okay, sure. And thank you, Keisha. We welcome your voice to the conversation.
Thank you and good evening. This has been so informative. Just
Oh,
had a
don't worry,
question.
we ain't even done yet, girl.
Well, I have plenty of notes. I have a question about how do you determine what you want to focus on? Sometimes in my mind, I want to start writing something about executive leadership or fragility in the workplace, and then it may be romance, and then it may be self-help. How do you know really where to start? I know
Well,
you
first of
talked about
all,
the
when you
one.
got all those ideas, you better get to writing. And I'm not playing. Because anybody who has all of that, God's given you a lot to say, and you need to get it said. This is what I tell people to do. I don't believe with everything in me, and especially if you're new, I don't want you to try to write more than one thing at once. I really want you to stay focused. How do you choose? Which one is burning in your heart more?
Mm.
What's burning in your heart more? When I first started writing, I did have ideas for 3 and 4 and 5 books. I have ideas now. I even writing historical fiction. Let me show you this. I have this 3 volumes of a book here. Oh my God, I can't even lift it up. Look how heavy this thing is. Of all these Black women and the famous things they've done. Do you know how many stories? And I have 3 of these. Do you know how many stories I have in me? But one is going to burn in my heart. That's the one. Don't set the others aside, but keep notes on them. Even in the middle of the night, if they wake you up, go put a note, but keep it organized in files in your computer or however you do it. But you can only write, especially in the beginning. And I've been writing for 30 years. I don't know how to do it. You can only do one at a time. It doesn't mean that the others aren't burning in you, but which one is burning inside of you more?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Victoria. And thank you, Keisha, for the question. And just for time check, we're approximately halfway through and we're about to
Okay.
talk about characters, which I can't wait to hear what you say about characters because giraffes were ugly babies, co-authors are soulmates. I guess there's a connection through the soul, the spirit. So if you can tell us a bit more about characters, and should I drop the document in now, Victoria, or just let me know when you want me to queue up the document?
Yeah, okay, so you'll know as soon as I say it.
Okay.
You can do it. Okay, characters are my favorite thing to talk about, character and character development, because the character is what I write about, what I live for. I wrote my first novel in 1997, and a few weeks ago, I had to put a video up on social media to tell people to stop asking me about that woman from 1997 because she wasn't even real. So I put a video up. And then my pastor, my female pastor, called me and said, "What you mean? What you mean we're never going to see a book about her?" That's when you've written good characters. When people think they're real, and I keep telling them, don't say that out loud because somebody might take you away. So I absolutely love characters. And just know in the beginning, every story to me really begins with the character because even with the plot, you have to have someone telling the story. Think about it this way: plot moves the story, characters tell the story. So you have to have them working together. So before you even start your story, and most of my stories begin with a what if question. What if a woman has been seeing a man and they've been celibate together, but she discovers the night before their wedding that she's pregnant? Like, I really wrote a book like that. Then once I have the what if, I have to decide who's going to tell the story. So you have to ask yourself things like, who is this person? What do they want? What can't they have? What do you want them to have? And the way you learn who the person is through the character resume. That's your clue. That's your cue. The character resume. Terry McMillan told me in 1997 to go to McDonald's and to get a application for McDonald's, 1997, because she said they had the most extensive application. And she told me to fill out a character resume for every character in my book that was going to have a voice to talk, that was going to be speaking. And that was in 1997. And I have done that for every single character I've ever written about. Every single one. Even my real ones in historical fiction. Because and I do it before I start writing. Because if you know your person before they start, then you're going to be able to write about them. Now, this is what I want you to understand. In the first draft, even after the character resume, you are not going to know everything. Characters are like friends. The more time you spend with them, the more you will get to know them. So there are people who tell me they could write a book in 30 days. I don't think so, because you don't know that person. Because I remember, which book was this? This was one of my 7 Deadly Sins, whichever one had the name Keisha in it. I wanted her name to be Ariana because I liked the name Ariana. And I'm not kidding, this is going to sound a little strange, but as I was writing, she kept saying to me, "I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana. My name is not Ariana. My name's Keisha." And I kept saying, "Your name's what I say it's going to be because you ain't real." Do you know by halfway through, I just went ahead and changed her name to Keisha? Because I got to know her and Ariana didn't fit. And I should have listened to her from the beginning. but I didn't. And your characters will talk to you when you get to know them. Sometimes, and they sometimes won't say anything till later on. Like later on, they'll tell you in your third draft. I'm like, really? Now I know you like to play chess. Why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? But it's because the longer you stay with them, the more you're going to get to know them. So now in each book, there are different types of characters. And I just want to make sure you know the difference. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll talk about it even more. There's the protagonist. You've all heard that, right? That's the person who is the story. It is her story. And I say her because 90% of commercial novels are women centered because women are mostly the fiction readers. So I have had male voices in my book, but always a female centered story. So that's the main character. She's the one whose journey is happening in the book. She's the one we're going to follow. That's the protagonist. The antagonist, and I know people hear this, and you often think of them as someone who is evil. Not necessarily, but the antagonist is the person that does oppose the protagonist. It's the person that's going to stop the protagonist from getting what she wants. If anyone read Harlem Rhapsody, W.E.B. Du Bois was the antagonist. He wasn't an evil person. He was just going to stop Jessie Redmond Fawcett from getting what she wanted. Not on purpose, or not on purpose. That was just what life was at the time. Does that make sense? So the protagonist is the main character whose journey we're going to follow. The antagonist is the person that's going to oppose the protagonist. Now, these two people were in love. That does not mean one wasn't the protagonist and one was the antagonist, which makes it such an interesting story because they're in love, but he's still against what she wants to accomplish. Then there are supporting characters. You must have the supporting characters because they help to reveal who the main character is, especially best friends, especially parents, especially siblings and spouses. So they are all part of the story, but make sure everybody is there in the story for a reason. And the reason is always to support the protagonist. Remember, I called them supporting characters. So they're there to support the protagonist. And now there are two other types of characters that really fill the other ones. Dynamic characters are the ones that are going to change in the book. Something's going to happen. So it could be this, even though the story's about the wife, it could be the husband that's going to have some change too because of the wife. Does that make sense? Or the children will be affected. But a static character is just there to help move the story along. A static character is someone like the policeman. The policeman who's there questioning the story, questioning the people. He's there eating the donuts. You can make him as stereotypical as you want. Because he's important to the story, but not important to the story. Do you know what I mean? He's there, but he's not moving the story forward. But he's there because we need them to tell the story. So they're not going to change at all. But talking about change, a novel is about a character having a transformation. Where the character starts is not where the character ends.
Gotcha.
Or if they're in the same place, then we just wasted 300 pages. Does that make sense to everybody? If the character, so the 300 pages is about their journey and all the struggles and all of that is all the conflict. A well-developed character story starts one way and it ends in another way. And when you're writing, so when I first started writing, especially my very first book, people said to me I had well-developed characters. That wasn't what it was alone. That wasn't what it was by itself. What it was is that most of the time, most people, you only knew a character physically, by the way we describe characters. You only knew them physically, and you may know them a little bit emotionally if you've done a good job. One of the things that I brought into writing in especially my first writing, and I'm so surprised that I was one of the first people to do this because I'm Black. I brought in the spiritual side.
Mm.
Because I was writing I'm considered the first Black person to write Christian fiction, which is crazy to me. And that was when I was writing that. That's not what I write anymore. But people felt like they knew the characters better because there were other sides to them. So I want you to think about this as you're developing your characters and you're doing a character resume. Of course, we need to know how they are physically, what they look like, emotionally, who are they attached to, but put in that morality, put in this spiritual thing. And here's the thing, when you're filling out that character resume, not everything that you put on the resume is going to be in the book, but it's going to help you know this person before you sit down and write. Does that make sense? So you're going to know them, and you're going to know their favorite color is pink, and it may not ever show up. Well, if you're a favorite color pink, yeah, they may always wear it, or their favorite color is red, and they want to grow up and be one of us, or something like that. So all of those little things that can help make a character deeper. That's what you want to do. You want them to have levels in this. And one of the things that you're going to see, especially when you're doing the character resume, over the years, I want you to know, I've taken that character resume and really developed it. So now it has social media on it and everything on it. So I always tell people, use that character resume before you begin. One of the things is that when you're writing a character, if you want to see a character change through the story, you're going to talk a little bit about, through action, what they want and what they need. So again, in Harlem Rhapsody, this is the Black woman in 1920 who wanted to run a magazine. That was never going to happen. That's what she wanted. But what did she need? And at the end, she realized what she needed, which wasn't what she wanted. And that's part of the journey. Always look at what they want and what they need. And here's the one, I think, one of the most important things you need to know about characters. No one is all good and no one is all bad. And I'm not saying this to be funny, but this is true. Even Jeffrey Dahmer loved his mother. And as I say, I just want to, because I think it's so important. Sometimes new writers will tend to make someone all evil or someone all good. That's not an interesting character. A character has to have real motivations, real flaws, real complexities. And that's what the character resume will help you do. Because perfect characters are so boring. And every time as you're writing through, when I teach writing classes, I teach people how to say why. Why? That's what you should be always asking about your character. And one of the things I want you to do, we're going to wrap this up in a minute. I just love characters, in case you couldn't tell. Put them under pressure. That's the rising conflict. Put them under pressure. And here's the thing, as you're writing, you may not know what they're going to do. Like before I started writing, I'm so glad to be writing historical fiction now because they already lived the life, so I know what's going to happen. I have never, ever known what a character was going to do. Ever. I just sit down. Once I do the character resume, I know them and I feel like, and then we just start talking. Because I wrote a book called Stand Your Ground, and I remember one scene literally typing and going, don't get in the car. Don't get in the car. No, you got in the car. I remember writing like that thinking, you're a nut. Because you could have stopped her from getting in the car. But I try to go with the flow of the character. So you don't have to sit at the beginning and say, oh, I don't know what they're going to do. Let it be a revelation to you. If it's a revelation to you, it's going to be a revelation to the readers. So
Okay.
you don't have to know everything that you're going to do. So this is an exercise I want you to do again in terms of knowing characters. I want you to pick a character from a television show, and then I want you to pick a character from one of your favorite books and fill out that resume so that you can get to see, oh, I never thought about, because I'll be asking you questions and you're going to have to go back to the TV show and see. Or go back to the book, because then you're going to understand the complexities of characters. And that's what makes a great novel.
Okay. Victoria, are we ready for questions?
We are.
I know,
I'm
I love the
sorry.
passion, but I got to keep us on the timeline.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a question from Lyric. Lyric Burnett, I don't know if you want to come off of mute, and if not, I'll read your question. Is Lyric still on the call?
Yeah, I'm still here. Hello.
Hi, Lyric.
Hi, I love your name.
Thank you so much. One, I want to say this has been like amazing. I'm so intrigued by this entire event. So thank you so much. I had put this question in the chat right before you talked about the character resume, but I was just curious, how do you find the voice to like tell someone's story even when you haven't lived through those experiences personally?
So that's a good question. One of the things that I try to do, because I never lived in 1920, but one of the things I try to do is try to go to those places. And you don't always have to go in. I mean, I'll tell you another story quickly, but I went and lived in Harlem for 5 weeks. And it wasn't 1920, it was 2022, but I was there and I walked the same streets and I did everything that the characters were doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if you're making up characters, I try to, I don't want to say live, but get to know them. So I think it was a book Lust where they went on, first of all, I was writing in a male point of view and a female point of view. And one of the things, we're going to talk about dialogue in the next thing, I cannot stand when a male character in the book sounds like a female character. So I was like, ooh, I've criticized all these people. I better make sure I don't do it. So then I started watching shows like Power, because I'm not a big TV watcher, and those kinds of shows. And I just started studying the men. And sometimes I would turn the TV on mute so I could just watch their gestures, because I didn't need to hear what they say. I wanted my male characters to be men. And I get compliments from men saying that the men feel like men in the book. So that's one way. I don't have to be a man to write, but I study it. And then I sent them on a honeymoon to Dubai. I had never been to Dubai. I got on the internet and I found everything I could, like even street maps. So I named the streets and everything so that people could be there. I ended up going to Dubai the next year. When I was driving from the airport, it felt like I had been there before. That's how right I got it. So use the internet to put you in the places where you want to, where you want to be. And are you writing about a real person or fake people?
Fake people, but I feel like with fiction, there's still reality and everything.
Yeah, no, that's what so I wanted to say, give yourself grace. You can do whatever you want with them, but they are going to be similar to something you know. So study them. Like, it was a fake guy I was writing about, but I watched men on television to try to get, and then I talked to my male friends about what to do. Funny story. My husband has passed away, but in my first novel, it was about a woman who slept with her best friend's husband. So I needed to know how that would, and they had a good marriage. So I was saying to my husband, so how would that happen? How would that? He was like, it would never happen. Ain't never gonna happen. And I was like, no, come on, I know it's not gonna happen, but tell me, because I need to write. He was like, it never gonna, no. He would not tell me. I had to go to one of our other friends, because he was like, it's never gonna, no. I was like, I just need to know. So wait, no. So sometimes you can talk to people who will help you, and sometimes there are other people who won't help you.
Your
But talk to
husband's a smart
people.
man. Your
I'm sorry,
husband's a
what'd you
smart
say?
man. Your husband was a smart man. We know that was a trick question.
But
He was very smart. Not to say
wasn't a
anything else.
trick. But I
Uh,
mean, it was stunning to me that he would not help me
uh-uh.
with the plot. It was stunning. He's the
Well,
one who told me I needed to write a book. He was so proud. What the heck? Help me
we
with
can
the story.
we
He
can
was
talk.
like, nope.
We can talk offline about your husband, but he's right. You don't put that in the atmosphere. So coming back, we have a couple more questions from the
Okay.
chat, and then we'll transition to
To
dialogue.
dialogue.
So there are a couple of things about the location. One, how do you
Yeah.
choose the locale and how important is it? And secondly, could the antagonist or protagonist be an event versus a person, like a storm or a building?
Yeah, there's some people say it could be God. That's what because even events and everything, it could be God. I don't know how to write those stories. I
Mhm.
have to see somebody that, is really, but it could be. Yes, it could be an event. It could be a storm. I think, did you just say that? It could be a storm, that or there was a movie once called The Birds, and it was birds that kept them like all captured in the thing. That's too scary for me. I could fight a man, but I can't fight no birds, and I'm not trying to run from no hurricane. So, but yes, it could be. It could be.
Gotcha.
And how do I choose setting is one I was going to talk about that later, but settings. I'm a basketball fan, and settings to me are like the sixth man off the bench.
Mhm.
A setting is a character if you do it right. And I love settings as well. Like, I love the fact that I was writing Harlem Rhapsody, and writing it in Harlem because people said they felt like they were in Harlem, like they were just right there. So settings are very important. Choose them carefully. And when you're writing fiction, make it an interesting place. Make it, and I usually do real places so people could say, oh, I'm from Mississippi. That is exactly how it is in Jackson. I like using real places because then I can also go research it. But it doesn't matter. You can still make it a Mississippi place and give it a fake name, but go and research Jackson and make it like Jackson. But settings can help set your story.
Gotcha. There's one quick question I do want to squeeze in before we transition, and this will be the last until we go to dialogue. But how do you reconcile the work you write about fiction with your spiritual beliefs? And this question came from Carla Roberts. And once you answer, we can just swing into dialogue afterwards.
So I don't know what you mean by spiritual beliefs. It's interesting because when I first wrote Temptation, and it was categorized not by me, but by the industry as Christian fiction. I took a lot of heat from Christians. I had people come up to me and say, you had them having sex in the book. Now, I never write graphic sex because I think we all know what body parts are there and we know where they go. I always make it a mental kind of thing with it, but people have sex, and I had people who were really upset with me that I had them. I was like, oh well, I wasn't talking about you. I'm just talking about me and my friends. Like y'all, you and your friends don't have no sex, but the black women. So and one of the reasons I think I did so well was because I was writing real books. I remember there was a book that was written that came after me, a woman who was writing a Christian novel. And again, she caught her husband or something, and she said, let us all hold hands and pray. I didn't write those kinds of books because I don't know a lot of people that would do that in that moment. I think they would be praying for forgiveness from the jail.
Yeah, I'm gonna put my finger on my nose about sex because my mother's on the call, but
Okay.
not it. But anywho, with
But
that,
I do like that you said that, though. Let me tell you this. Every book I've ever written with the sex, everything, my father, my mother, and my pastor, female pastor, could all read.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And now we're going to transition into dialogue.
Yes, I love dialogue too. I guess there's no part of this that I don't like. Maybe that's why I've been doing it for so many years. Okay, so dialogue. Here are some key points, just to some notes I made so we could very quickly, because what I wanted to do at the end is open it up for everything, for questions for everything. But dialogue that helps to bring the story to life. One of the things that you need to know about dialogue is that it's more than just people talking. Dialogue is really the action that are that's going on in the story. It's part of the action, and it's keeping the story moving. Dialogue reveals a lot about the character. It's going to tell you their education. It's going to tell you where they're from without them saying where they're from. It's going to tell you a lot about them without them saying, I am a Harvard graduate from Boston. There are just things that you can do with the dialogue to reveal it and make it fun. And every single line of dialogue has to serve a purpose. It has to reveal something. If it's just people talking and saying hello, get rid of it. So you don't need, even though you want authentic dialogue, you don't need mundane dialogue. And this is what I mean by mundane. This is what we do as people in real life. Hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? That would be boring as anything if it was a whole bunch of conversations like that, right? So you just get into it. You say they greeted each other, and then she was like, girl, guess who I saw? Go straight into the conflict or whatever. So we want real dialogue, but not mundane dialogue. Does that make sense?
It does.
To keep it moving. And then you want to capture how people speak, but get rid of the ums and the ahs unless it serves a purpose. Like when somebody says, so where were you? At the store. The serves a purpose there, right? Unless it serves. So get rid of all of that other stuff because you need it only to help tell the story. So let all of the rhythm, let the pauses, let the interruptions, like if there's somebody who interrupts somebody constantly, let that happen. That reveals the character's personality, doesn't it? Or a character that speaks in cliches all the time, or something like that. Use your dialogue to help reveal the character of the person. Also, use what a person doesn't say as part of the story. You can do it in thoughts. So I let me think of it because I've done it before. Something like somebody says to you, to the character, do you like her? And then she goes, oh, yes. And then she's thinking, I like her like I like a box of rocks or something like that. Because what does that tell you? That person doesn't want conflict. That person doesn't say what she really feels. That tells you something more about the person. And even the way people talk, make it different. And I do this when I'm deciding it in the character resume. There are some people that are going to talk in short, choppy sentences. There are some people who are going to go on and on. There are some people who are going to use big words. Or I don't know if any of you might be too young for that show In Living Color, where there was this guy in prison. Man, they made up words that the esophagus was part of the irrational. I mean, that was just hilarious. And I can see one day I said I was going to try to do a story like that. So that is always a lot of fun. You can do that too. And really use dialogue to add mystery. And what I mean by that is a character could have just seen something or rushes in and they're disheveled and everything. And somebody says, what's going on? How are you? And they go, I'm fine. You know they're not fine.
No.
Use dialogue to build that. And one thing about dialogue though, dialogue should be a must. This is a must. This is a VCM rule. Must be surrounded by narrative. And what I mean by that is you don't want two talking heads. You just don't want two people just talking, hi, how are you? I'm fine. You want someone to say, hello, and then like if they're on a telephone, hello, and then she leans back in the chair and crosses her leg. Do you see what I'm saying? Doesn't that
Yes.
add more to it than a hello?
I have
And
a visual
then,
picture.
I'm
Mhm.
sorry, what'd you say?
Have a visual. Keep
Have a
going. Keep
vision. I
going.
know, just like that. And then she's like, how are you? And then his lips spread into a grin that shows all of his teeth. I write better than this. I'm just making this up now. And so, but isn't that something going on? So even without saying it, I have not said the word flirtation, have I? But I've shown it with dialogue and the action around the dialogue. So the action around the dialogue makes it so that it's not a talking head and it helps to show the story. You're not telling the story because I could have said hello, she said flirtatiously, but that's not telling the story. That's telling the story, not showing it. So I had her say hello and lean back and cross her legs and twirl the cord. Well, I guess we don't have cords on phones anymore. I'm showing my age. Around her finger, those kinds of things to help. So make sure you let the story, the dialogue, be really a big part of the story. And don't you adverbs. Adverbs do not add anything to any verb. And this is what I mean. What is better? I can't stand you, she said angrily. Or, I can't stand you. She slammed the coffee cup down on the counter so hard it exploded in her hand.
Mhm.
Which
Great
one would
read.
you, right?
Yeah.
Adverbs don't add a thing. Like I try to write books without adverbs in them. It's hard with my collaborator because she likes them. But if you see the parts I write, I try never, because challenge yourself to show us to show us she's angry.
Mhm.
Don't tell us she's angry. Does that make sense? If you
Absolutely.
ever hear people say show, don't tell, you just got the best lesson you'll ever have in show, don't tell.
We'll call that the Missouri rule. But in that, the show me
Oh, that's
state.
so cool. That's
But no.
cool. Show, don't tell.
But with
And
that, I'm sorry, Victoria, go ahead.
and then the last part of dialogue, really keep it clear and distinct. This is where your character resume is going to help a lot. And what I mean by that is please make men sound like men. Please make women sound like women. One of the things that I do, and this is just a trick, when I was writing pure fiction, I can't do it much now because I'm writing about real people, but I would always make, when I was doing the character resumes, always made the characters from different parts of the country. Always. Never made them both from New York because that's a little bit more difficult to distinguish between. Now they can all be living in New York now, but one was from New York, one's from Mississippi, one's from California. And when you do that, you're going to have distinctions between your characters, not only on language, but on dress, on backgrounds. So separate your characters in the very beginning. From the very beginning in the resume, just separate them so that they will be clear and distinct. And then their language will be, because the one from the South will have her own little Southern things. Like when I went to Hampton and people were making groceries. No, I'm fitting to go make groceries. I'm like, what? I'm from New York. Fitting? And what kind of groceries you gonna make? But isn't that a distinctive line of dialogue and will tell you something about, now all y'all gonna have that line in there and that's gonna be good. It's gonna be because it's very distinctive. And when I was doing that, I would look up Southern cliches or things like that. Even now writing, I look up cliches and slang from the 1920s because I want to be authentic to that language. So here's some assignments, and you're going to end up doing this all the time. I promise you. You're going to do this all the time. I can't get rid of it. Because it's so important for you to learn authentic dialogue, I want you to go out and eavesdrop on conversations. So when I started doing this, I got a couple of stories out of this. Starbucks one time, I was like, okay, this will be my day to listen. And a man and a woman came in. He had on a wedding ring. She did not. Doesn't mean anything, right? Until they sit on the stools and they sit almost on top of each other. And I'm listening to their conversation thinking, I could make a whole bunch of money blackmailing both of y'all. Or I could make more money and just put it in a book, which is what I did. Never say never.
Mhm.
So seriously, eavesdrops on conversations, the best place for me are airports and Starbucks. There was another time when I was on an airplane and Rashonda was with me and she was sitting across the aisle. I was sitting and there was a woman in the middle and a guy at the end. And the lady sniffed and cried the whole time on the whole plane ride. And he was like, you knew what this was. You knew what this was. And I couldn't figure out the rest of the story because I was trying I didn't want them to see me listening, but I was listening. And so you just get story ideas, but you learn how people speak.
Mhm.
You really learn how people speak. And one of the things I want you to do again, get a book that you enjoyed. You're not going to write anything. You're going to read the dialogue, especially of a scene, read it out loud.
Mm.
Read it out loud. Even when you write your own dialogue, you should read it out loud. But read a book that you like, go read the dialogue out loud and see and understand what it is that you liked about that.
Thank you, Victoria. The Detroiter in me has to say what up, though, because I wouldn't be Detroit if I didn't say what up,
That's
though.
right. You could say that.
But in that, I'm looking at our time. We're at 8:32. I'm going to hold the questions in the chat until after the secret sauce.
Yeah,
So
the
we'll do
secret
all
sauce I'm
those
going to just
questions
do
after.
very quickly. I'm going to just do
Perfect.
very quickly. These are just some tips that I learned, just some key things that I learned that will make a book better. One of the things, the very first thing that my first editor taught me is put the reader there. I actually have something in here in my room that I have set up where you can see, put the reader there. And the thing that is so good about that is that when I finish each scene, I look back to see if the reader will feel like they're there. And one of the ways you can make sure that you are putting the reader there is using all 5 senses. Most of the time in books, we just tell people what they see and what they heard. Don't forget the touch, the smell, the taste. You can't do that in every scene, but focus on using all 5 senses. Put the reader there. Another thing you should never do, never, use cliches. Cliches are words that belong, okay, let me finish this. Cliches are words that belong to other people. You're a writer. Don't use cliches unless it's in dialogue, unless it's a person who's speaking it. But you're not going to use it in the narrative. There's only 2 parts to a story: dialogue and words that are not dialogue, the narrative. You're not going to use cliches in the narrative. But what you are going to do is use your creative juices. And so, you know the cliche from the top of her head to the bottom of her toes? I changed that one time from the top of her head to the bottom of to her red bottom stilettos. Not only did I change the cliche, but I told you something about the character. Does that make sense? In the book I just wrote, make people think twice. I was describing 2 big guards, and I said they were so big and burly, it made men blink once and think twice. So take the cliche, this is something that I do, and just even have cliches that you know. Just see what you can do and twist it. I think you can use cliches, but you can make it better and reveal something about the character as you're doing it. So those are the big things with the secret sauce that I wanted you to know.
Well, Victoria, this was amazing. Thank you. I'm going to open it up. First, I'm going to call a few people from the chat whose questions we couldn't take. And then if you could use your raise your hand gesture and reaction, and remember to limit your questions to approximately 30 seconds. So before that, with
This
Sharice
is for questions for any part of it or
any,
anything you have.
and so first, Sharice Watson had a question about edits in the chat. Sharice, are you still with us? Okay.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Sorry, my remember so. But yes, I want to know how you handle when you receive edits that you don't agree with. Like when do you decide that you're gonna stand firm in it, or if you're
So
gonna
I
be
can't understand. Does anybody else understand? Because it's
Yeah,
kind of breaking up.
I can recheck her question. So she says,
Okay.
how do you deal with edits you don't agree with? When do you stand firm versus accepting the changes?
That's a very good question because when I get my edits back, like I got these edits back and she laid me out on the ground. I was like, don't you know who I am? I am Victoria Christopher Murray. What's so interesting about it is that I go through that every time and then I accept about 99% of the edits
Mm.
because they are seeing it from above and we've been working down here in the weeds. So there have been edits I don't agree with because most of publishing is white. So one time I had put something about CP time and she was like, well, what's this? And I told her and she said, well, spell it out. I was like, nope, we don't spell it out. Then one time she insulted me. This was a different one. She had actually written in the margin, you said Hampton University. Do you mean Hampshire University? I've never heard of Hampton. I wrote back, I ain't never heard of Hampshire.
Hello.
And she didn't say nothing else. Then there was something one time. I can't remember what it was, but I just wrote in the margin, it's a Black thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want you to do with it is that they don't make you totally follow them, but they do know what's going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? I had a good one recently, and I don't want to take up too much time, but I had a really good one recently where in Harlem Rhapsody, there's a scene where W.E.B. Du Bois says about Jessie Redmond Fawcett that he loves her because of her pedigree. You know, she's beautiful, educated, but he loves her pedigree. So when my co-author read it, who's white, she was like, I don't really like that. I want him to like her for her. So I just ignored her. And then when my editor read it and said the same thing, I said to myself, she didn't like it either. And I'm thinking, I'm writing for a broader market. Maybe I'll change it. So I changed it to what they want. You know, I like her because of what she looked like. In the middle of the night, I feel like W.E.B. Du Bois woke me up. I came right in here in this office and changed it back. I wasn't going to whitewash the book. That's something that Black people do. Who they're people. That's what we do. So you can stand firm, but what I'm always open to listening because I want to see what they say. They know a little bit more.
Gotcha. Thank you, Victoria. The next two questions, and apologies if I butcher your name. Kalia Selman had a question about narrators. Kalia, are you available? And then Lyric after Kalia, Lyric has another question. Is Kalia here?
Yes, I'm available. I just was curious about how you decide to have like an external, like third party narrator to the story versus like using the characters kind of like in a meta capacity to move the story or the capacity of the story along. And then also as an addendum, I'd love if you could squeeze in a few more nuggets about publishing and the publishing process. You talked earlier about not paying for publishing, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that if we have time.
Okay. I have only written novels where the character's telling the story. I know there's people who've written books, and I haven't even read many of them, where there's a narrator kind of talking about all the people. But I don't know how to do that. I always try to become the character. So that's not a question I can answer, unfortunately. Unless you're saying, who do I decide is telling the story?
Jerry Jones had a question to that effect. Like, how do you decide what voice or who's
Who's
telling the
telling the
story? Right, who's
story?
telling the story?
Yeah, so that's a good question because remember I said that I ended up writing a book called If Only for One Night?
Mhm.
And if you think about it, if you think about that song, If Only for One Night, could be told from a man's point of view because he's, singing. It could be told from the woman's point of view, or it could be told from both. So that is a decision on every book that you have to make. You have to sit down, and that's the fun part of writing. You have to sit down and say, whose story is this? Whose story is this? Is it the man or the woman? And then, even if you can make notes, does the man have enough of a story? Because sometimes you might think it's both people, but it's only one of them who has the big story. And you can just fit them in. You know what I mean? You can fit them in the story and it'll feel like it's the man's story too. But that is a decision you have to make. And that's a wonderful part of writing and putting it together. You may start out saying it's both of their stories. Like I have a friend who's getting ready to write a book about W.E.B. Du Bois' daughter who married County Cullen, who was gay. And W.E.B. made her marry him. But anyway, she was going to make the story Yolande and County, started writing it and said, County don't have Yolande has the big story. So you may change along the way. Here's something I want you to always remember as you're writing. The best thing that God ever gave a writer is the delete key. You don't have to be married to anything you write. Put it on paper, see what it looks like, see what it smells like, and then you can move on from there.
Mhm. And thank you. And one clarifying question in that, you mentioned the writers always speak. Do you always write from a first person voice throughout the book? Does every character use first person voice or other voices?
That's a good question. My first 10 books were always third person.
Mhm.
And then I got a 4-book deal to write young adult books. And I was like, how am I going to write about 15-year-olds? First of all, it's been a long time since I was 15. Second of all, I don't really like 15-year-olds. I didn't like my daughter until she got out of the teenage years. So how am I going to write? And I realized in order for me to write those books, I had to write them in first person. I had to become a 15-year-old to relate to them because they were getting on my nerves.
Mhm.
And once I started writing in first person, I love writing in first person. Love it. Because then I become the person. So it's easier for me to write in first person. I have some rules. If you're going to have more than 2 people talking, I don't think you can do first person. Because then when readers see I, that's when you always have to use the names at the top of the chapter, but you don't want them to have to go back now. Who is this one again? Who is that one again? So first person works wonderfully if it's just one person who has a voice. You can do it with 2. I think with 3, go back to third person. So those are the kinds of things that you have to do. When I wrote Harlem Rhapsody, I started it in first person. My agent told me in the second draft to change it to third person, so I changed it all to third person. I didn't like it. So in the third draft, I went back to first person. And that's a lot of work.
Thank you. We're at 8:45. There are 2 questions in queue, so I'll go to the 2 questions. And Lyric, I think Victoria spoke to a part of your question about characters you don't like, but I invite you, Lyric, to ask your questions about characters.
Thank you so much. Yes, it's a good segue, I would say. But my question is basically, have you ever wrote a character that you didn't like personality-wise? And then how did you continue to give them space in your novel, even if you didn't agree with them?
That's a good question. So the character that everybody loves, I am so sick of Jasmine. Her name is Jasmine Cox Larson Bush because she got married all those times. I didn't really like her, didn't know nobody that liked her except all the readers. She was like Erica Kane, a person that you love to hate. And so and I really didn't like her because she did some of the dumbest things. But she was a character and she was fun to write. it's not, I think it's the people who are just the most ridiculous that you hate that are fun to write, because you can get to create them and round them and make them go as far as you want, or as not, or you could bring them back a little bit. Um, and then, oh, when I wrote a book called Stand Your Ground, yeah, this was a white man who killed an unarmed Black boy. I didn't like him. And when my editor got the book and read it, one of her edits was, I thought you knew, Victoria, not everybody is all good and all bad, because I'd made him totally evil. And I had to go back and work on that. But you need those characters to make the book strong. So that just becomes a part of it. That's a good question. I had forgotten that. I hated that man. I hated that man. And I had all the pictures of George Zimmerman and all of those people in my head. I even named him Newt, like Newt Gingrich. I mean, that was his name in the book. So there was nothing to like about this man, which is why the ending was so satisfying. I won't tell you in case you go back and read it. But I think that's going to it challenges you as a writer, and it makes a book good. Because you don't want to have all good people in every novel you write. It'll be a challenge. And every book you write, as you write more and more and more and more, each book has to challenge you. Because if you start getting bored writing, the readers will feel that.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
And Victoria, we had another question from Mildred Allen. Mildred, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Yes, thank you so very much for hosting this. I have just been inspired. So my question is there a fundamental distinction in the approach to developing a child versus an adult character to allow for depth and authenticity without trivializing them?
Yeah, ooh, child, that's so good. I've never written, except for those 15-year-olds, I've never gone, I have had children in a book, and but they're not the main voice. They're talking to their parents and things like that. I would fill out a resume for them. If you were going to do a young child, I'd go ahead and fill out a resume for them, just like you would an adult. And then I would, unless you have young children around, I'd go ahead and listen to children. I would, and really, so that you could get their authentic voice. So the way you do it is the same way I did when I was like, okay, I want to write these men well. So it's the same way, it's just different characters. And you may want to even read some children's books. It won't take you that long to get in the headspace. I think the reason that's such a good question is, for every character that's going to have a big voice in your book, you're going to have to get into their headspace. And so do whatever you need to do, whether I needed to go live in Harlem for 5 weeks, or whether you need to get on the internet and learn everything about Dubai, if that's where they are, or whether you have to watch Power, and I'm not a TV watcher and I have to watch those shows. Whatever you have to do, you have to find a way to get into the headspace of the people who are going to be important in your novel.
Victoria, a couple of follow-up questions from the chat. And I'm sorry, I cut you off for your thank you. Much appreciated for your question. But there are a couple of questions from the chat, and then I'll go to Tracy after this. And I believe Tracy may need to be our last question. We'll see after time. But how do your rules apply to, is there a difference in writing a children's book? Is there a difference in writing a cookbook? Like, when do we apply these rules that you've mentioned, and when don't we?
All I know is fiction.
Mhm.
I don't know anything about children's books. I don't know anything about cookbooks. That's like asking a French teacher to teach biology. It really is. They're still teachers, but we're in totally different genres. So a children's writer would tell you if, I mean, they would listen to this class and say, okay, you can take this, 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 and this. I would think it's the same thing with the rising, you know, but you don't have to have as much conflict in, you know, a children's book or something. But I don't know. I wish I did, but I don't. I can tell
Important
you
to say.
anything you want to know about fiction.
Well, and we appreciate it greatly. And so, Tracy, you have a question?
Yes, first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much, Victoria. This has been phenomenal, just feeling your energy through the computer for your passion for this kind of work. And I wanted to ask quickly about the mindset work that you've had to do to be able to take this little baby that you've created and give it to the world and sort of not, you know, open yourself up to whatever criticism the world has to give you, or, you know, they might not love it as much as you love it. How have you sort of steeled yourself, if you will, for that kind of thing? And what advice can you give? Just, I think, overall in general, but for writing in particular as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, and thank you for that, Tracy. The when I wrote Temptation, Amazon was just starting. I wrote it in 1997. And so not only was it fun to just sit on a computer, because, you know, we didn't have the internet, so it was fun to do that, but I would read all of the reviews and they were so good. And it was my first book and it was 5 stars, 5 stars. It was just wonderful. And then one day I went on there and somebody gave me a 1 star and they wrote trifling dribble. Now, think about this. This happened in 1997, and I still remember exactly what that person said. Trifling dribble. And I burst into tears. And my husband was like, really? So you're going to ignore the 99 5 stars and focus on the 1 star? And from that day forward, I've never read another review. Reviews are not for me as the writer. Reviews are for you as the reader. And so I stay away from that. And you'll notice that you'll hear actors say they don't read reviews. They don't. It has nothing to do with me because the book's done. Nothing I can do about it. And I don't want any of those things to get into my head for my next book because every book is not for everyone. So, like for The Personal Librarian, we've sold 1 million copies of that book. If you were to look at, because I can see, even if I don't want to, I can see the number of reviews and like the average review thing. The Personal Librarian has sold over 1 million copies, and it's the lowest rated book I've had. And to me, and it's 4 stars versus 4.2, or for me, that just means, the more you sell, the more you're going to be open to more people liking or not liking. So now I'm happy about that. Bring on the bad reviews, bring on the lower ratings, because that means that I'm being exposed to more people.
Right.
So I've just learned a way to turn all of that around. First of all, stay away from that because you do not want it affecting your writing. It has nothing to do with you. That time I took it personally. And what we tend to do is focus on the negative. Just focus on it. And now it's my job. So, and I just turned 70. So I don't care. Like, I really don't care. And I don't want to write to nobody and tell them, look, I don't care. So when you get to that point of not caring, it's so wonderful.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
hope that helped. To be serious, writers need to stay away from that. Writers need to stay away from listening to outside voices of people who've never written a book, who just Amazon has made people think that they have the right to say anything they want to. Stay away. Every time you go to look at a review for your book, I want you to hear this voice in your head saying, dang, Victoria won't leave me alone. Stay away. I'm not even playing. It has nothing to do with you.
Thank you, Victoria. And for everyone, we'll include it in the after notes as well, but there is a link to the survey if everyone can take time to complete the satisfaction survey, and I just dropped the link again. And Victoria, a few tactical questions before we go to closeout. One, is it possible to get an example of a character resume that you've completed, or just one so people can see what the finished version looks like?
Oh, sure. But I don't have, I'd have to go
We could
through
send it in the
my,
after notes. No, in the after notes,
okay.
we can share that, and
Yeah,
then
I
people.
never thought about that. I've never thought to.
Yeah, no worries. And then there are other questions just about high level bullets on editing, but the editing process, but we can take those offline because I do want to make sure. I appreciate everyone giving us their time. We're at 8:55, and so I'm gonna
Yeah,
say,
and you know, maybe like in the after notes, if there are like five or something other questions, I will answer them. And you, if you're sending it out to people or whatever, I would love to do that. And then did you tell people that about my Substack?
no, and let's do that. So
Yeah,
Victoria,
so everything I have been doing, a Substack. I love teaching writing. In case you didn't notice, I kind of like this stuff. I love to read, I love to write, I love teaching writing. I think me teaching writing has become more important now as I get older because I think I must help people. I must help the younger voices get out there, especially at a time such as this. I think our writing needs to become, our art needs to become our activism. Our writing needs to become our resistance, and every kind of story that has a Black character needs to be out there. And I would like lecture you that needs to be out there. So on Substack, and it's called Right Now. I think there's a link to it.
yeah, I just dropped the link in.
Okay, we're doing something this month called Right Now November, and every Monday night I meet in a session like this. And so when you subscribe to my Substack, you'll get the link for it. And people are writing together and writing, trying to write as many words as they can in November. And maybe you'll come and meet some of your tribe and things like that. And then from there, I haven't decided yet exactly how I'm gonna continue it. I think once a month with something like this, where it's just called Ask the Author, and you could ask me any questions, or I'm thinking about like doing workshops, but it's going to continue. So join me on Substack. So this isn't the end if you don't want it to be the end. I mean, if you want it to be the end, that's cool too.
We don't want it to be the end forever, but we need it to be the end tonight. With that,
I
we're
know.
gonna.
I'm so sorry. I just get so excited. I love
We
this.
love
And
the passion. We
we
love
are
it.
Black women who need to be doing this.
Love it. And I want to invite people. We're going to save the chat. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll try to answer as many as possible in the after notes. Please do subscribe to the Substack and also take the survey. And those items will also be included with the example of the character resume. With
Yeah,
that,
that's a good idea.
we
That's
got you with the notes. And so with that, Natasha, I'm going to transition to you for our closeout.
All right. Well, we are so excited that you are still here. We're over 100 strong and we love it. We've hoped that we spurred the writer in you, and you're anxious to share your story with others. And, we have the opportunity for you to put your questions in the chat, stay in touch with us. And we thank you, and we look forward to your evaluation so we can continue to improve these Not Your Average Books Club events and programming. So share with us your ideas and things you liked about this program and how we can make it better. So we're looking forward to receiving all of your evaluations and comments. And we did take a picture earlier. We took a few, but I'd like us all now to take one group shot. Some of you didn't join in. This is your opportunity now to show us your smiling faces. And if you don't want to show us, it's okay. You just won't be in the photograph. So, Erin, is someone going to be able to get our pictures? So, why don't we say writer's workshop on 3? 1, 2, 3.
Writer's
Writer's
workshop.
Keep smiling because you might be on the 3rd or 4th, 5th page. All right.
I got all those that are on camera.
Okay.
Thank you. And I want to thank everyone. This was wonderful. I know I just went through a whole bunch of stuff so fast, so I hope you got something out of it. But thank you for coming. This was wonderful for me. This was
And-
wonderful. We're going to do this again with my chapter, so we'll figure it out. We'll do it again. We're going to do it again. This needs to be a regular thing. I just got to write some books in between, but we're going to do it again.
And when you write your books, you make sure you say you started with us first. Okay?
That's right. That's right.
All right. We have our second vice president, Soror Erica Scavella Hill. Do you have any parting words for our group today?
Thank you so much, Natasha. Victoria Christopher Murray, we just want to thank you for all that you're pouring back into the chapter and into the community through your service to our chapter. This was an amazing session, so thank you so much for being here. I want to acknowledge our first vice president, Tamara Wells-Lee, who is here, and who is also one of your fellow authors.
Yes, she's a great. If I'd known she was here, I would have had her in.
She's here. I wanted to thank her for being here as well, and just for the amazing participation of our guests. Thank you so much for joining us. Please stay tuned for more. And that is it. Good evening, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
And don't
Thank
forget,
you.
we recorded this.
Good night.
We recorded it.
Thank you, Soror. So appreciative.
Yeah. So we're gonna let you know where we post it so you can review if you need to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Have a great evening, everyone. Good night.